Hi everyone. We're going to be talking about case management this week. When we're working through a counselling issue, it's more often than not a process rather than an event. God's work with us is generally done progressively and not instantaneously. I know you've read Jay Adams' book on the critical stages of biblical counselling. So today is going to have similar content, but it's just a very quick overview. So when we think about the counselling with a person, as we discussed, using the analogy of a journey, the stop and starts, how we're going to break the journey into sections, and how do we know when we want to stop or when we've arrived at the destination. So with counselling, we need to have a rough structure that we are also working with. So I want to differentiate between the content of counselling, that's the issue that's brought forward or brought in as the presenting issue, and the process of counselling. It's how the sessions are run and everything. Most complaints are made over the process rather than the content. So, like for instance, if you belong to the New Zealand Christian Counsellors Association, they have a complaints committee where people can ring in and complain, and they take this very seriously. None of us will be able to belong to that because of their code of ethics, but I'm just explaining. So there'll often be misunderstanding about expectations. The client mightn't feel they've been heard, that they've been given too much advice, or they've been pushed into decisions, or that boundaries have been broken. So it is necessary, and working in the church, it's a fine balance between we're not being professionals, but we're not just meeting over a cup of coffee, or we might be, but if we're going for a slightly more formal approach, then we do need to have these structures in place as safety for who we're working with and safety for ourselves. So the process, as I say, is called case management, and this week we're going to look at the management of the overall process. There aren't any hard and fast rules about the different phases that there are within the counselling process. So there's, say, 4 general phases. So they don't last for so many hours, and the different borders aren't always clear. They're just a rough guideline of what the overall time that you spend with a person over weeks or months might look like. So phase 1 is building a bridge and identifying the issues. Establishing the relational bridge is pivotal. As I said, that 85% goes, they say that the positive outcomes from counselling, they attribute that 85% of that success is because of the relationship. So the relationship is really important. So taking the time to develop that. And the other aspect of phase 1 is getting a picture of the person and their problem. So asking questions about their home life, their work life. Have they sought help before? Why did they decide to seek help now? I know that you've discussed in the sessions with Daryl about using a PDI, a personal data inventory. I actually really like to use these. I think you gather an awful lot of information that can save several hours of having to ask questions. And it allows you to ask quite in-depth questions. So you've got quite a broad and deep view of the person. So even if you do use that, go over it with the counselor in the first session. Don't just leave it. Sorry about that. I just got a phone call. Yes, so go over it, use it, and ask them questions about it. And just remember that what we call the presenting problem, the problem that they're coming into you about, may not be the real issue. They might just be putting that out to test us, to see what sort of person we are, how we're going to respond, before they actually disclose the real issue. So just be aware of that too. So phase 1 is about getting to know the person and developing the relationship. Phase 2 is continuing to understand and develop the issue at hand. So a lot of dialogue at this stage. It's a stage where there's a lot of exploring going on. Phase 3 is working out with the person what needs to happen for the desired changes to become reality. So change is hard. Sometimes circumstances can't be changed, but attitudes and perceptions can be. And of course, as Christians, we put off certain things and we can put on. So there are choices we can make because of our faith in Christ that will change us and our perceptions, even if our circumstances can't be changed. Our responses can be. So this is the time to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of change. Some people might know they have to change, but change is hard and they don't really know if they want to do that. I had just a gorgeous young, late 20s girl I worked with for over a year, maybe 18 months. First of all, she came because of alcohol, and but later it worked out. It also she was very dependent on her partner. She was a Christian, he wasn't. They were living together occasionally. Then she got pregnant by him. He was beating her up. She had the whole support of the church behind her. They'd provided her with a house. They had people looking after her, other children. And this guy was really bad. He came round to her house once with a gun. He was selling drugs. And she was just this most gorgeous girl, but she couldn't leave him. And so she knew what she had to do, but she just couldn't do it. Well, anyway, eventually she did. She had to get in a court order and a protection order the night he arrived with a gun. So I'm just saying that even though it might be very obvious that change is necessary, people, and this was a girl who'd had a horrific background of, in foster homes all her life, had a first child at 16, a traumatic past, and finally she had someone who loved her and what she thought was love. And so it's often safer to stick with what you know than to go and make change and therefore go into the unknown. So change isn't always easy. Finally, phase 4 is finishing and follow up. So helping relationships are temporary. We need to be sensitive how we finish them. You might want to suggest a few weeks out that you think the time together is drawing to an end. You might want to assure them that you're always going to be here. You'll work it out together. You might say, look, I'll ring you in a few months to see how you're going. So there's no right or wrong framework. My supervisor likes to get people to commit to 6 sessions with a maximum of 12. Then that, because he thinks 6 sessions is a minimum, but often you don't want people going on and on and on either, because you don't want people becoming dependent on you. So I've had a variety. I've had some times I've met for one session, and just one truth that they've seen has just got them back on the right path with God again, and off they go. I have others that ring me up a year later, 3 years later. So I think if you've developed that trust, that they know they can come back to you. So always the management process, keep it under review and be talking about it with the person you're working with. Again, talking collaboratively, because they might see it differently to you. I've had several sessions where I might have had a beautiful relationship with the people I'm working for, and just suddenly we both realise we're a bit stuck. It's like we've come to an end. And I'll say, I think we've come to an end. And the person said, yeah, I agree. And that will be the last session. They both have rung me a year later or so. So there's no hard and fast rules. Just again, be sensitive how you end it, and trust the relationship, trust what you're sensing within the situation. So to recap, under case management, we're looking at the management of the process. So we've got 4 phases to building a bridge, a relationship bridge, and identifying the issues. Phase 2, further developing our understanding of the person and the issue. Phase 3, working out with the person what needs to happen for the desired changes to become reality. And phase 4,
1 moment.
Finishing up and follow up.
Okay, I found this on the web for phase 3, working out with the person that needs to happen for this.
Sorry about Siri. Jolly nuisance.